Sup, chooms, how y'all living? Hope everything is Nova and you're all having a preem week. So, it's only been one day since my last video where I covered HMI 115, but I am back already because we have an absolute emergency on our hands. The results for Pyrilutamide's phase 3 trial have been officially published, and here is how the internet is reacting. That's right, the online hair loss community has collectively lost their shit over this, and everybody is in a veritable panic mode. We've officially entered DEFCON 2 in the Haircafe cinematic universe, and unless someone clears the air soon, we're going to be at DEFCON 1, and it's going to be World War III on our hair follicles. That's why I'm filming in my cellar today, because it is underground so I can avoid all the DHT fallout. Alright. So I'm going to give my own take on this news, but before we continue, let's all take a deep breath. Are we calm? Okay, let's continue. Alright, so when I first heard about this, I thought it was a hoax because the news was not published on the drug manufacturer Kintor's website. I thought it was either a hoax or some unofficial leak, but it turns out that as of today, the news has been published on the website, so the data is officially legitimate. Here is the document that was posted on the Kintor website. It is just a page and a half long. Anyways, here is the paragraph that goes over the results. I'll just go ahead and read it, and keep in mind KX826 is the code name for Pyrilutamide. Quote, "The results showed that the overall safety of the trial was good, with KX826 demonstrating excellent safety profile and no serious adverse events were reported. After 24 weeks, treatment target area hair counts of the treatment group showed that KX826 promoted hair growth compared to baseline with statistical significance p less than 0.0001. Compared with placebo, there was target area hair count improvement at all visit points in KX826 group with no statistical significance, but a trend in efficacy was observed." Unquote. So let's break this all down. First of all, let's go over the good news. The drug is safe. A lot of people who are excited about Pyrilutamide are people who don't tolerate finasteride very well, and that's fine. Finasteride is a well-tolerated drug, of course, but there are still a small number of people who will get side effects from it. So having a hair loss treatment alternative that may have fewer side effects than finasteride is of course good news for the small number of people who cannot tolerate 5-AR inhibitors. But the safety profile of Pyrilutamide isn't why people are disappointed in the results. It's the efficacy, and at first glance, I can understand why people would come to the conclusion that this treatment is bunk, but let's go over what they say about the efficacy and see if it is really as bad as it seems. So, keep in mind, this was a double-blinded randomized control study, so there was a treatment group and a placebo group. The treatment group received 0.5% topical Pyrilutamide twice daily, and the total hair counts were measured periodically over 24 weeks. So, there are two ways to analyze the results here. One way is to just look at the total hair counts before treatment and after 24 weeks of treatment. Looking at the data that way, Pyrilutamide caused an increase in total hair counts, and the increase was very strongly statistically significant with a p-value of less than 0.0001. We don't know how much the hair counts increased, but we know that they did increase and that the increase was due to the drug and not due to chance. But the other way to analyze the data is to compare the change in hair counts in the Pyrilutamide group versus the change in hair counts in the placebo control group. Normally, you wouldn't expect much of a change in a placebo group since the subjects in that group were not receiving any active treatment. So, it looks like the Pyrilutamide group did have better hair growth at each follow-up visit compared to the control group, but the difference in hair counts between the groups was not statistically significant, meaning the p-value was greater than 0.05. So there was a trend towards better hair growth compared to the placebo control group in the Pyrilutamide group. Now, this is surprising given the fact that the phase 2 trials of Pyrilutamide showed positive results, and this phase 3 trial was quite large with 740 subjects who were enrolled. The results imply that there was significant hair growth in the placebo control group, which isn't too unusual because subjects on a placebo treatment will often get some results. That's why placebo control groups exist. But what is strange is that a placebo treatment would be comparable to an actual medical treatment, which begs the question as to whether or not Pyrilutamide does anything at all beyond just placebo. In fact, if this study was just a before and after study of Pyrilutamide and there was no placebo control group, we would conclude that Pyrilutamide was a very effective treatment given the fact that there was statistically significant hair growth with Pyrilutamide. The problem is, it's possible the placebo control group had more hair growth than one would expect, which ended up diluting the Pyrilutamide results. We just won't know until the complete results are published. At the moment though, we have no numbers to work with here, which means we have no absolute hair counts and no percentage changes in hair counts in the treatment and and control groups. So we don't have enough information to fully judge the results here. However, I have to admit this is not a good look for Kintor. So if these results are real and not some artifact of problems with the study itself, here are my two theories as to why we are seeing these results. First of all, keep in mind that pyrilutamide is an androgen receptor blocker. It is not a 5-AR inhibitor like finasteride or dutasteride that stops the conversion of testosterone into DHT. It works by binding to the androgen receptor and preventing DHT from binding to it. In that regard, it has more in common with other androgen receptor antagonists like RU58841, Fluridil, and Breezula. So, if a drug is preventing DHT from binding to the androgen receptor on the hair follicle, why wouldn't that work? Well, the first reason is that it's possible that there is just not enough of the drug getting to the androgen receptor to have a statistically significant effect. And maybe that the drug is not absorbed well, or maybe the concentration of the drug is too low. The second possibility is that blocking the androgen receptor may not be as good as inhibiting DHT and preventing hair loss. When the androgen receptor is blocked, all androgens are blocked, including testosterone and other weaker androgens like DHEA. Contrary to popular belief, testosterone doesn't actually cause hair loss, and I did a video explaining that, which I'll link below. But to sum this all up, testosterone only causes hair loss if it is converted into DHT, so the presence of scalp testosterone is not detrimental to our hair so long as the 5-AR enzyme is being inhibited. But since DHT and testosterone interact differently with the androgen receptor, it is possible that blocking all androgen effects in the hair follicle is not as effective as just blocking DHT itself. It's possible that blocking testosterone from binding with the androgen receptor may even have some negative effects for hair growth. There is some evidence that testosterone may be important for hair growth and that low testosterone levels may be associated with hair loss. This may be why some men who go on testosterone replacement therapy actually report hair growth as a side effect. So specifically blocking DHT may be more beneficial than trying to block all androgens. This would explain why no androgen receptor blocking drugs like Fluridil, Breezula, and RU58841 have ever proven to be more effective than finasteride. They may have some benefit, but as it stands, 5-AR inhibitors are still the most effective treatment for stopping androgenic alopecia. So, if this theory is true, that would also be bad news for Kintor's other drug in development called GT20029. Even though GT20029 isn't an androgen receptor blocker, it still works to degrade the androgen receptor, which would still inhibit all androgens on the scalp and not just DHT. However, if my first explanation is true, specifically that these androgen receptor blockers are too weak to effectively block the androgen receptor, then something like GT20029 may end up being the most effective treatment out of all of them, since it goes well beyond just blocking the androgen receptor. It actually annihilates it, so it would be significantly stronger than anything like Pyrilutamide or RU58841. So, I wouldn't call these results completely negative, but they are disappointing. I still wouldn't write off pyrilutamide completely though. Like I said, we don't have all the details of the phase 3 study results, and it's possible the control group really overperformed here and thus diluted the effects of the treatment group. We also know that there is a second phase 3 study going on in China right now, which is primarily a safety trial, but it could also provide evidence that pyrilutamide is an effective treatment for hair loss. So, hopefully we'll get more data from Kintor on pyrilutamide soon, and when we do, I will give you guys another update for sure. So I'm sorry to have to deliver this sobering news. I know it isn't what I wanted to hear, but it also isn't conclusive enough to declare pyrilutamide to be a complete failure. It's possible that the failure here isn't pyrilutamide, but rather it is Kintor's study on pyrilutamide done in China which is the real failure. And maybe their subject selection was bad, which led to outcomes that don't accurately reflect pyrilutamide's efficacy. Keep in mind that the phase 2 trials were actually very successful, so it's possible this phase 3 trial is an outlier. We'll know for sure when the second phase 3 trial is released, but as things stand now, pyrilutamide likely isn't the hair loss treatment we were hoping it would be, and we may have to wait until GT20029 comes out before we have Kintor's ultimate treatment at our disposal. Alright, so I'll be back soon with more content. I understand there is news on Breezula, which is actually pretty funny since I almost forgot that treatment existed, but I'll be doing an update on that shortly. God bless.